morning. Welcome to the Los Angeles World Affairs Council and Town Hall. I'm Kim McClary, President and CEO, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to today's program. Thank you all for your ongoing support and viewership that has sustained us during these long, challenging months. We'll continue to provide you with a strong lineup of live streams, and we're also planning to bring back our in-person events just as soon as it's safe to do so. It is now my very great pleasure to introduce today's program, The Impact of COVID-19 on Moviegoing, with ScreenEngine CEO Kevin Goetz. Kevin Goetz founded ScreenEngine, a cutting-edge research and marketing firm specializing in providing solutions to the movie and TV industries. And I'm also pleased to add that Kevin is a member of our board of directors, which we appreciate so very much. Our moderator today is Pete Hammond, the Deadline Awards columnist and chief film critic, where he covers the Oscar and Emmy seasons. Pete, thank you so very much for moderating today's program. We're looking forward to a terrific conversation between you and Kevin. Let me turn this over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Kim, and I'm happy to be here with the World Affairs Council of Los Angeles and with my good friend Kevin Goetz here, who is a master of this universe of all kinds of analytics and everything that the industry so requires now. And welcome, Kevin. And I know you're a board member, but thanks for doing this, because this is a very important subject right about now as we enter year 2 of this pandemic shutdown of movie theaters.
Indeed, Pete, thank you so much. It's so exciting to have you moderating this. Usually I'm on the other side of this, so it's a little bit challenging. I have to learn to let you do your job so I don't jump in and trump you. And yes, you're absolutely right. This could not be a more relevant subject now, right? I mean, especially as Angelinos,
yeah,
right? Living in this town.
I grew up in LA, and my fondest memories, believe me, as you know, you can probably tell from all that's behind me here, is going to the movies in Los Angeles, and every movie that meant something to me. I remember where I saw it and what theater and things now, and it's totally different now, but this is so important for this town. This business, this industry, it is a cottage. It's like being in West Virginia mining and different things that define a city. And certainly this does. And this has been a very, very difficult year. And only now, only in the last week or two, are theaters even beginning to reopen and try to get back to where they were before the pandemic. But the question is, has the train left the station? And yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And, you know, Pete, what I did, and since we discussed this for a little bit right before this, I did prepare a presentation to sort of provide, I guess, context, because I don't think we can talk about what the effect of the pandemic has had and the aftermath of that effect on the, until and unless we understand where we came from and sort of what was going on with moviegoing prior to theaters closing. I also want to say what's relevant about this is that theaters closing is a proxy for sporting events, concerts, Broadway. And so when we talk about theater closing, it has to be with people. We're talking about what's happened as people stopped going to large gatherings in person, inside, etc. So that obviously needs to be said. But if you indulge me for about 15 minutes, I'm going to take us through. It's somewhat in the weeds, but I think it might be interesting for a lot of people to understand the state of the industry, just as I said, prior to theaters closing. So with that, great. It's I need to see how to advance this. Okay. There we go. You know this place, right?
Sure do.
Groman's Chinese. So yeah, as you said, I've been a board member now for about 1.5 years. And it strikes me that we talk so much about political issues and world issues, but we don't focus on our own community as much as I'd like. And I think that's why Kim and Jessica and Claire have put this kind of program together and want to be more involved in the motion picture business. You have to remember, I mean, LA is on the map because of Hollywood, because of the cultural export of this cultural currency that we send out into the world. No other country has ever done that, and it hasn't changed for over 100 years. China's trying to do it. India has done it pretty successfully, but not in terms of exporting to the entire world the way the United States has, and particularly Los Angeles. We are the epicenter of entertainment, and it's a very exciting place to be. So moviegoing has a very relevant place in for Angelenos, in economically, socially, and culturally. So I do want to start with a couple of fun facts, which is this is pre-pandemic. There were 39 million attendees that attended live concerts. There were 42 million people who attended, showed up in Las Vegas that year. There were 15 million Broadway show tickets sold. Theme parks, 118 million people attendees. And of course, the American pastime, Major League Baseball, sold 68 million tickets. Well, guess what? The real American pastime is moviegoing. 1.27 billion tickets were sold. And if that's not evidence of what we as Americans love to do in our spare time, I don't know what is. I want to make a case by saying that some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about might come off a little bit pessimistic, but it is just a reality of what's going on today. Movie theaters aren't going away, but certainly the value proposition is shifting and has shifted to home viewing. Now, it's not like the pandemic created streaming or even created the success of streaming per se. It was already underway. It only accelerated the inevitable. If you look at from 1977 until 2019 and then 2020 when it fell off a cliff. I chose 1977, by the way, because that was the time when Jaws and Star Wars came out and the landscape of movies changed. That was the first time when wide releases came into play. And so that meant that large advertising dollars for the first time were spent opening what we now call a tentpole picture. And the rollout of movies prior to that were much more platform or roadshow in nature. They would play for months at a time. Suddenly these movies come out, Jaws and Star Wars mainly in that kind of period of time, when it changed moviegoing forever. One thing hasn't changed moviegoing forever, and that is since the beginning of movies, we go into a dark room and we watch a rectangular screen with a bunch of strangers. And there's great comfort and, as you said, Pete, before, nostalgia in that, but there's also a sort of sameness to it. And you're going to see why that is has become an issue pre-pandemic and will continue to be an issue for movie going. If you look at the disruptions that happened since 1977, you can see there were three major disruptions: home entertainment disruption, then the internet disruption. Home entertainment disruption, VHSs, etc. More movies begot more movies. Internet disruption, smart TVs, cable stations galore, cable channels, more movies, etc. begot more movies. But the streaming disruption created sort of the perfect storm. What it really did is it provided consumers with the empowerment to be in the driver's seat. Now that can't be overstated because, oh well, sure, I know what I like, but that wasn't always the case. For years and years, we were told these are the 3 or 4 movies opening. These are the movies that are new in release in video stores, and there'd be lines and lines, and we would be like lemmings following what people threw at us. Not so anymore. Consumers now want what they want when they want it and how they want to see it. And that's been going on for the last, say, 10 years or so, if a little bit more than that. And it's only exacerbated and gotten more so as we've gotten more choice. A perfect storm occurred. Three things, a confluence of price, convenience, and choice came to be. Never did we have all three together. So in price, look at this. This is a no-brainer. I mean, this is a night out for family of four or a weekend out. And this is basically 5, if you include Disney and Hulu together. The price differential between a one-off movie or having subscription services for 4, 5 different services for an entire month with unlimited movies and shows, and you can see right here, whoa. So price became a really relevant thing in consumers' minds. If you look at convenience, it takes approximately 35 minutes to make a choice to go to see a movie and then get in your car and get there. In terms of streaming, it takes about 14 minutes to decide on, with all the scrolling and what you're going to watch, getting it in there. Is it on Amazon? Is it on Netflix? Is it 14 minutes? But you can see a huge differential in the time element, and that time is very, very important to consumers, as we know. And importantly, I mean, look at the theater. The theater on the right, you might say, well, who has that? Well, we're all gonna have that or some version of that before you know it. Already there's 80+ inch screens that many folks have. They're $1,500. But more importantly, if you went to the Consumer Electronics Show last year, you saw wall screens. So when you, for example, would go in to order a home, and you order, the marble floors and the granite countertops, you'll now say, I would like the full wall screen with the built-in sound package. That's weeks away. I'm being cheeky, but it's imminent, to say the least. So everyone, and this democratization of having your own in-home theater is only illustrating that when you go to a movie theater and you don't have big sound and you don't have big screens, we are reminded in a way of, well, why do I need to be here? But amenities are important with the big screen, with the big sound. And we know from our research that theaters that have great amenities, the greatest sound, IMAX is still very, very viable. Things that create more of an experience are far more successful. Who wants to sit in a theater that's disgusting and sticky and rodents? I mean, I have many stories I can share with you of things I've seen in theaters that shall go unmentioned. I do want to mention that there is a definite correlation when you get to choice, because the more scripted series that came into play, the fewer movie tickets that have been sold. This is, again, pre-pandemic. I use Bridgerton, even though it wasn't pre-pandemic, but you get the point. Shows like that people are now have become the water cooler conversation. And many of the Oscar nominated movies, for example, nobody even knows. So this is really a notion of choice. So if you look at both price, convenience, and choice, the home wins out each time. And of course, the studios have gotten, wise to it and have now opened all their streaming services. As many of you probably know, Disney bought 20th Century Fox a year and a half ago. Universal, and they started Disney Plus. Universal, Peacock, Paramount Plus, Warner Brothers, HBO Max. This is already what we had in the business pre-pandemic, which was Netflix, Amazon, and Hulu. So, and there's many more that you're not even aware of that are coming onto the scene in terms of discovery and some of the smaller stars, some of the smaller companies that are on this bandwagon now, because it is so bloody important. So as we grow in population, I want to be clear about something. because of now audiences saying, wow, do I need to see that in a movie theater or can I see that at home? There's no crime in seeing it at home. It's just one is more of an experience where you're willing to pay a great premium for, and one is not. Again, we're going to see, and Pete, you and I will talk after this presentation about, for example, this weekend, Godzilla versus Kong. And we'll see that it's being released both in theaters and on the service, HBO Max, day and date. And we'll see just how successful that is going to be. If you look, though, beyond just whether it's theater or whether it's at home, let me give you some really sobering facts about the greater the population grows, more people are going to the movies, but they are seeing far fewer films. And this is super important because think about the kinds of movies that you're going to see in a theater. The average person, the average frequent moviegoer, sees 6 to 12 movies a year. And think if there are, in 19, there were almost 1,000 movies released. Most of them were teeny tiny, but there were still about 140, 150 wide to semi-wide release movies. So you have to ask yourself, is that one that I'm going to choose to see in a theater? In 2009, 10 movies comprised 30% of the entire box office, 20 movies, 46% of the box office, and 50 movies, 72% of the box office. And there were 180, this is out of 181 major releases. In 10 years from them, in 2019, 10 movies comprised 41% of box office, 56%, 20 movies, 56%, and 50 movies comprised 79% of the box office, which means that 950 of them did 11% of the box office. And then we ran an econometric model to predict what it would look like in 2029, where there are, and by the way, there were 110 movies in the 2019 calculation, but only 80 to 90 in 2029. 50% of box office will come from 10 movies. 10 movies. The Black Panthers, the Avengers, 66% from 20 movies and 86% from 50. Again, there can't be 1,000 movies. And if there are, they're going to get a lot less share of the market, which means there's 14% left to divvy out between anyone else who wants to play in the space. There has to be a reduction in probably studios and certainly in the distribution of those movies. Again, we can talk about that a little later. When we polled people, and we polled people throughout the years, obviously, with all sorts of questions, the thing that rises to the top is this level of fun. Now, fun is often the most determining factor that will get people to see a movie in a theater. And I'm not talking about fun. I'm not talking about funny. I'm talking about an elevated carnival ride, something that is really makes me want to see this in a theater because it has to be experienced. That's a feeling, followed by, a unique and special premise, a franchise potentially that I really love, visual effects, obviously, some kind of emotional experience. And of course, one of your favorite stars, although the stars have declined in terms of their box office worth for many reasons, which we can talk about also later on if you're interested. But understand that sense of fun and think in your own lives, if you will. What makes me go to a movie theater? Now, everyone has their own sense of fun. My sense of fun and Pete's sense of fun may be Nomadland, maybe Trial of the Chicago 7, maybe Minari. That is, every person has their own level of that. However, most people don't view the movies I just mentioned as their level of fun. Most people see that as the big superhero movie or the big action adventure film, etc. So if you look at what I did here, I took out, this is called a 2x2. On the top, I put fun big event. That's on the x-axis. fun and big event, and below, not fun, not big event. On the vertical line, the y-axis, you can see more likely to watch at home on the left, followed by at the theater on the right. So if you look at the top right, which is the most theater-worthy experience, superhero movies, action adventure, suspense thriller less so, comedy less so, and comedy less so in terms of seeing in a theater, more fun, and horror, same thing. But drama, animation, sci-fi, fantasy, romance, faith-based could also basically be seen, you know, at home, and not think twice about it. Remember, filmmakers often see the hierarchy, the food chain, as the film in a theater being the absolute ultimate experience. Not so with consumers, particularly young consumers. If you look at the same chart with 25 to 64-year-olds, you could see that superhero and action adventures still hold up. Sci-fi fantasy takes a little bit more of a place in terms of theatrical worthiness, and animation also does, because a lot of these people in this age group have children. Now, again, not so much fun for them, not as much fun, but certainly more theater worthy. But suspense, thriller, drama, comedy, especially horror, faith-based, romance, all take a real backseat. When was the last time you saw a romantic comedy in a movie theater? This explains kind of why. There's not a tremendous appetite for it. People love romantic comedies. I think Crazy Rich Asians might have been the last bona fide hit, but it was still more of a comedy with romantic tinges or romantic overtones. And here's a very interesting, and I'm nearly finished, but I wanted to give you the sense of what was happening pre-pandemic. This is the number of movies that people see by age had seen in 2009. That is to say, for instance, 12 to 17-year-olds saw 7.9 movies. 18 to 24-year-olds saw 8.4 movies. 50 to 59-year-olds saw 3 movies. We're also very much divided by generational gaps. The Gen Z and the millennials are what we call digital natives. The Gen Xers and the baby boomers are digital adopters. So we've adopted, but we haven't grown up in it. For digital natives, it's a different story. It's a different world. And just ask your kids and they will tell you. Because if you look at 10 years since in 2000, and this was in 18, only because that's when we ran this particular study, you can look at the precipitous drop with 12 to 17-year-olds. Look at 18 to 24, 8.4 movies down to 5.1. That's very significant. Now, the digital adopters actually went up slightly, stayed flat to going up slightly, but the increase in the adopters does not account for the decrease of the digital natives, which means that we're losing moviegoers as we get older and the adopters age out completely, and the digital natives take over the population. And here is the projection for 2030, so you can see. I also should mention, and you can see the drop once again. You begin to see the as people age up, everything is moving towards less and less going to a movie theater to see a movie. I also want to mention that the pandemic was a sort of a catalyst, but this has been going on, as I said, for several years leading up to the pandemic. I don't want you to think that the pandemic is responsible. I also mentioned before, I keep saying 2029, 2030. Truth be told, that timeline, that is probably accelerated because of COVID by a few years. So these projections are probably more like 2025, 2026 now. And now, where are we in terms of attitudes about returning to theaters? We conducted a poll that about returning to movie theaters. As you can see, essentially hardly anyone's gone back to movie theaters already. This will be the first weekend where we kind of will see that, and I'll talk about that in a moment. I'll go back as soon as theaters open, no matter what movies are shown. 9%, again, pretty small. I'll go back as soon as they open, but only if there's a movie I want to see. And we haven't had great movies by any stretch over the last year. There were a few great movies, but not that many. And I'll go back only if the theater enforces the safety protocols, proper safety protocols at 12%. But look at the people who will wait. I'm going to wait, see how things go, 9%. I'll wait until I've received the vaccine, 12%. I'll wait until the pandemic is over, 22%, and I'll never go back again, 8%. So 30% of people are not going back at all or anytime soon. So if you look at this data, though, which is in a positive trend, going from June of 20 to March, just this past month, you can see that perception changes. People have shorter memories. What was 31%, I'll wait until the pandemic is over, is now 22%. I'll never go back was 12, now it's 8. So there's gonna be a shift. My prediction is that we are going to see, well, I'll take you through that now. We're gonna see a drop in what we call the new normal. But if you look at where we are today, as Pete said, movie theaters are just starting to open. Of two major chains, AMC and Cinemark, they're opening at 95% locations, but they only have 25 to 50% capacity at this point. The largest theater chain, Regal, has been absolutely closed the entire time of the pandemic, and they're opening 24 of their 500 locations this year. That basically is good news. It seems inconsequential, but it's good news because they're opening some of the biggest markets, and so there'll be a disproportionate amount of gross that will come from that those small number of theaters. We ask ourselves, is Godzilla versus Kong the canary in the coal mine? It grossed 123+ million in 38 markets prior to opening in the US. So that's going to be a really interesting and telling thing to follow. Memorial Day should bring back some, as we get more highly anticipated fare in the marketplace. You have Cruella and Quiet Place 2. But then really it doesn't kick in until the last week of June, first week of July, when we have Black Widow, Maverick, Top Gun, and Maverick, and then we have Fast and the Furious as well. Still, box office overall in 2021 will likely be down 50 to 60% of what it was in 19. So it was 11.2 billion. It'll be somewhere between $4.5 to $5.5 billion for this entire year, even with the way we're talking about the openings. What can you expect to get back to normal? When can we expect? There's benchmarks that they have. Like you have to have 80% of theaters open, and we're currently at 54%. And then there are daily and weekly metrics that have to be like the lowest they were in both 2018 and 19 when theaters were still going strong. And lastly, the new normal. The new normal will be probably beginning a year from now. 2022 is when we start to get a rhythm that is, back to a kind of a normal, but we'll be down 10 to 15%. Now, some of this has to do with COVID, but I think more of it has to do with everything I presented in this presentation, which is the younger generations just are finding a different way. And a lot of older folks, when I say older, I mean the Gen X's and baby boomers, the digital adopters, who were not necessarily going. We're not necessarily not going to the movies. We'll go to the movies, but have been trained, like my father, who's 89 years old, to go on to Netflix and to Amazon and ESPN and has actually learned to navigate that, and that wouldn't have happened. So there'll probably be a depression of about 10 to 15%, as I said. What you can expect is no more standardization. Years and years, it's been 70-something days, 80-something days before a movie left and went to the pay cable window, or it went to, or the video window, and then it went to the free TV window. Those days are gone. It's a custom approach. Some are day and date, like Godzilla versus Kong. Some are 17 days. Universal's 17 days in most of their releases, but the big tentpoles are going to be 31 days. Some are 45 days. And it will depend on the movie. Can we expect maybe different pricing that's going to happen? Some movies maybe will be worth $22 or $25 a ticket. The Black Widow, for example, and then maybe one that is Promising Young Woman. I'm not putting that down, but the production value might determine that may only be worth $14. That's something that is always been frowned upon. They do use that approach in other countries like China, and they've seemed effective. But the exhibition community and distribution community has very much dismissed that. Keeping, note to exhibitors, make it an experience for us to go. Created a great night out. We'll probably pay more if we go to see fewer movies, and those movies are truly special, and they're presented in a really special way. And with that, I will come back to Pete and say, Pete.
Yeah. Wow. What a presentation. And it's so depressing in some ways, but still hopeful. I just want to know, Kevin, is there anything the industry can do? We all know that the movie business, the theater business, has been threatened many times over its life, beginning with television. That was the big monster that was going to end moviegoing. And then they invented CinemaScope, and they invented widescreen, and bigger things to get people to come back to theaters. It has always survived one way or another. Is this the final straw, or is there hope that the industry could actually turn this around and still thrive as they have in the past?
It's a great question, and there's two things at play. One is we're not going to get young people to say, oh, I think I'm going to go to the movies because moviegoing is really fun. So to launch a campaign, which I've heard rumblings of in our industry, of remember what it's like to go to a movie. People don't need to be reminded. They love movies. People love going to a movie theater, but only for certain movies. So we're going to see far fewer movies. But when you go, you want to be dazzled. You want to have an experience, and you'll feel really good about it. And young people still want to go. As you can see, they're just not seeing. They're seeing half the number of movies that they were going to see because they can see them easily on their phones, and multitask, and not have to turn their phones off because they have to be in a theater where they don't allow that. Where I see the future really going is a major reduction of screens. We're probably going to see a reduction of screens by the end of 22 by about 500 locations, which is a drop in the bucket, 10% right now. There's about 5,900 screens right now in locations in the United States, and about 43,000 screens. So again, if you only lose 400 or 500, it's not going to make a huge difference. But what I see is in, say, 10 years from now is probably destination points where you would go to, have an experience. There'd be alcohol, there would be food, there would be, and there is already, but even more so, you would have great seats. They would be really clean. And ultimately, not the gimmicks of, say, 3D or real D, or not real D, what the thing where the seats shake.
Oh, I hate that. I accidentally went into one of those things. I thought we were having an earthquake. It was
maybe if you're seeing, remember Earthquake and Sense-Around back when? But I think those are gimmicks. But I do see theaters in the round, holographic images, interactive. IMAX has it right. I mean, IMAX is the IMAX experience. It is a differentiation. And I really believe that that's going to be the thing that will most excite people. But I don't think we're going to turn this ship around. And I don't think we want to. It's great to have your home theater and home access. And it's also great to go out for an evening.
Yeah, because Jack Valenti, who was head of the MPAA when it was called the MPAA forever, always famously used to say, "What kid is going to want to sit on his parents' couch on a Friday night and stay at home?" And I asked that, what parent now, our grandparent, wants to stay at home after a year being stuck there? Won't they always have that impetus to want to go out, despite everything you're talking about, having this all at your fingertips in your home?
The answer is yes, but not as much. The other thing is there's a whole social change of how young people interact. We've got to get that. If we don't get that, remember, consumers in the driver's seat. So important to understand your consumer. And if you don't, beware. You're going to lose out. If you don't listen to them and do things status quo, it's not going to work, right? And so you and I grew up with a nostalgia to movies. Your first kiss, you put your arm around your girlfriend or whatever it may be, and you remember the movie. I remember seeing Escape from the Planet of the Apes when I was 13 years old and we had pizza party afterwards. Like, that was what we did, and that was fun, right? And then people are doing the math right now.
I'm doing the math, Kevin.
Yeah. But what that signified is that movies meant something, and the experience of those movies meant something, not just the movie itself, but going to this place, the mystique of that, the mythology of that is by and large not coming back, except for the purists. I mean, as much as I respect and support Mr. Nolan and Mr. Scorsese and Mr. Spielberg, and they should be fighting for movie theater going. It's their job to do that. But to be on the other side of that from a business equation, you've got to really embrace reality of what's going on with the younger generations. Again, there's not a death knell. It's just going to change. It's going to shift.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find watching a lot on and I always resisted it, but as a critic, I have to watch it. And so I'm in a little bit of a different position, but I've seen everything for the last year on a television screen, a big television screen, that I figured out how to cast. Oh my God, I'm in with every support group there, trying to figure out how to do all this digital stuff. It can be complicated, but nevertheless, I find it more disposable than I did going to a theater. My memory of the movie, everything like it just sort of goes into what Paul Schrader, the director, famously defined Netflix as the larder, into this thing. And unless you're like right there at the beginning, you forget, oh, I got to watch that. Where do I find it? And all that.
But Pete, keep in mind, though, that yes, it's true, but we never had this ubiquitous sort of content everywhere we turn. And so therefore, you can't see everything. There's a fragmentation. So where it's not everyone gathers around. It's very rare that you have a Bridgerton, for example, that everyone can talk about. If you do, but I'll tell you this, when we run quality studies, and we've been doing it every year, 67%, 70% say the quality of movies has not changed, regardless of the format. The other 30%, 15%, the quality has gotten better, and 15% of the quality has gotten worse. That we've been doing for 30 years, and it's the same thing. That has not changed. What has changed is the fact that we have so much to watch. There's a lot of crap out there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, but when you and I had our discussion about what do you see? I mean, I was so excited to hear your top 10 list, and you and I agreed on, I think, 7 or 8 of the top 10. That is where we come together and we say these are special movies. It's why the Academy is very important, because they are really trying to honor this, this very diverse group of wonderful pictures. And yet people say, well, they don't make movies like that anymore. Well, they don't make. A friend of my trainer this morning, we were working out, and he said, I saw Green Mile last night. Oh my God, it's so good. And I said, yeah, no studio would make that now. And he said, what do you mean? I said, it's a drama. No studio would make a drama. It'd be a streamer.
5-letter word. Yeah.
Look at Mank. Mank would have been made 20 years ago by a studio. So would Trial of the Chicago 7. No question about it, right?
Yeah, no, not now. I mean, their specialty divisions are the ones holding them up at the Oscars now, too. And so Nomadland is not Godzilla versus Kong, but you're showing great excitement for the numbers that we saw last night on this level here. That there might be hope for this day and date idea that Warner Brothers got so roundly criticized for, taking their entire schedule for this year and putting it on for the first month on HBO Max, first month of theatrical release, and they will be day and date, what they call day and date. And now I see our comments on Deadline and things turning around a bit. Well, it looks like Warner Brothers may have been smart. They're serving
honestly,
both audiences.
And I hand to God, I said, because I couldn't be that voice. I didn't want to lend my opinion to that, and you guys called me and others publications called me for a comment on it, and I have to say, my comment now is very smart from a business standpoint, and it has to be painful in the beginning, or else there's no change. Do you know? Right. It has to be painful. But Godzilla versus Kong did $9 million last night and change on a Wednesday opening in the end of hopefully the end of the pandemic. This is very good news for theatrical moviegoing. That means that, as you just pointed out, people can see it at home, or they could see it in a theater. That movie screams theater worthy.
Right. Yeah.
I don't care if I haven't seen it. I'm going to see it tomorrow night. It may be the greatest movie. It may not be. It's the perception of it. It's grand. It needs to be seen in a theater, no question. Do you need to see Nomadland in a theater? Well, actually, you and I do, because we saw how beautifully visual it is.
Yeah.
And a Tenet should be seen on the big screen.
Right.
It's a glorious visual experience. You get my point, though. I think, and each person has their own benchmark of what is theatrical versus not. I mean, you and I come together on the fact that if something is extraordinarily great reviewed, that elevates it to a sense of worthiness for us. Others don't care about reviews. Many people don't care about reviews. They care about the concept. They care about the big idea. They care about the fun, what I mentioned before, the elevated fun.
Yeah. Well, just before I go to questions here from Jessica, who's going to coordinate that for us, I just want to mention Nomadland. You say it's very important to see a movie like Nomadland in a theater. It's slow. It tries to envelop you. It's got beautiful vistas of the Southwest and all of that. They're even trying to show that on IMAX right now to get you for a different experience. It doesn't all have to be monsters and superheroes.
No, correct.
Also, I think we should
absolutely. You're absolutely correct. And as I said, the majority of people will never see Nomadland.
Yeah.
But for cinephiles and frequent moviegoers, that we would like to see and appreciate those elements. When I talk about the research and the numbers, this is a generalization. We don't live in outlier land, because there's always outliers. We're talking generally speaking, this is where things and trends are heading.
Yeah, it's interesting. Jessica, do you have questions from our vast virtual audience out there?
We sure do. Thank you, guys. This has been a great discussion. Kevin, the first question, China and Japan are having record box offices even during the pandemic. Do you think this is any indication for the US consumers?
100%. It's an absolute canary in the coal mine, as we like to say, and it speaks to what the US sentiment is most likely going to be. I mean, the COVID rates are so much more diminished in those countries compared to the United States. And so that speaks to people feeling comfortable going back. It's not just, what I'm hearing, to get to the new normal for that 30% that I talked about before to come back, we got to reach like a herd immunity. And to get a herd immunity, I'm hearing as low as 70% and as high as 90% of the entire population. There may be people just saying, I'm not going to risk it for a couple of years or ever. I don't need to do that. And that is where we just have the unknowns right now. But I think the fact that they are confident in those other countries and going back does portend to what's going to happen here.
Pete said the train has left the station. Ironically, the Academy Awards is being shown at Union Station downtown. Will you guys discuss the move from Hollywood and Highland and why?
Well, Kevin, you're a member of the Academy. I make my living reporting on their every move. This is an attempt to meet the COVID restrictions and have social distancing and still try to do the Oscars live and not as a Zoom event, not like what we're doing right now, having some sort of in-person semblance of it. They expect, though, looking at all the other award shows so far this year, they've all dropped 60% or things. I mean, it just seems inevitable. But, you know, to me, it's always about the movies. And that's what draws an audience into the Oscars. Titanic, Lord of the Rings, Black Panther had good ratings comparatively. But is Nomadland and Promising Young Woman and these movies that they can see on streamers more easily now than in other Oscar years going to bring in an audience? I don't know.
I will say in defense of the Academy, and not that you were saying anything against the Academy, Pete, by any stretch, but in defense of the Academy, we are lucky enough to conduct a brand study every year post-Oscars, and there is not even an iota of diminishing tarnish on the brand. In other words, Oscar is still Oscar. It's
good.
More of an indictment on television viewing and live anything than it is about the Oscars themselves. So Oscar still has great meaning, whether it is the movie, whatever movie it is, and there's a sort of a loyal group that's going to continue to watch until we're dead. But young people just don't watch live TV, so the ratings are going to keep going down and down and down.
Or they consume it in bits and pieces on their phone. They can see YouTube. They see the performance. This is how people watch talk shows now. Late night talk shows are more popular, you know, on their YouTube thing, and the way they roll out carpool karaoke separately than actually sitting there and watching. It's just a different world.
Well, we have a question that's a little bit to that. I often watch a movie at home with my cell phone or laptop nearby. This is obviously not going to fly in theaters. Do you think that our addiction to little screens has impacted our appreciation of the big screen?
Pete?
Yes, I hope so. I'm a big proponent of the big screen experience in theaters. I mean, Kevin mentioned in his great presentation, you know, these home theater ideas that are very accessible and close to being accessible for everybody. Everybody can be on what they used to call the Bel Air circuit now, where, you know, the big moguls have their own screening rooms. People are going to have a semblance of that. And, you know, that's great in their home, but it still doesn't replace going out and that incredible sound and everything. The theaters, as Kevin said, need to come to the party here and make sure that it's that experience. And we will always have an appreciation. As I mentioned, television initially was a huge threat to movies until they developed CinemaScope and other ways to separate the two. So I think they need a semblance of that. Again, I'll just say, watching things on my television set, it's more disposable to me. I just move on and go to the next one. Very few of it stays the way it did in a theater. But then I'm an older guy, and I have my memories.
The difference, again, is that, again, the consumer is in the driver's seat. During television and CinemaScope and all of those other disruptions, the home entertainment, all the others, they were not. And there's an arrogance in the exhibition community of, we're going to call the shots. Not anymore. I've talked to one of my dear friends yesterday who runs a chain, and he's like, he's there with the program. They have to. This is a changing world. That's when I said you cannot overstate that consumers are in the driver's seat. People go, oh yeah, we are. That was never the case in 100 years of moviegoing prior to the streaming disruption. Now people are like, I don't mean any disrespect, head of Studio A. I love your movie, but if you're not going to show it to me on Wednesday, oh my God, I'm going to watch this and this and this over here. And they will.
Thank you. This questioner says, I am a playwright who is currently studying screenwriting and I'm writing a drama. Are you saying that it would be better as a streaming than as a feature?
Yes, period. Yes, only.
All right, there's our answer.
Go ahead. The playwright, though, the playwright used to be a staple of movies in the 50s and 60s. All the Broadway shows were turned into films. Here we have a couple of movies, One Night in Miami, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, The Promise of More August Wilson plays getting a theatrical, but they're all on streamers because studios don't do what they used to do.
Now, that said, write a great script. It will find its platform. Okay, that's the important thing. But just know that economically, everything I just said tells you that the drama is something that I can see. It's not a dramas are my favorite genre, period. I think, Pete, they're probably yours as well. If we really think about the movies, it doesn't mean we don't love them, and it doesn't mean they won't even make it into the theater. To be a drama and make it in the theater, you sort of have to have universally great reviews, not okay reviews, universally great reviews. And that kind of elevates all those dramas. Of the 950 movies or whatever I talked about that were being left for that 11% or whatever, 14%, those, many of them are dramas. But you don't even hear of them. They're only in a theater they're like ego plays rather than in where they really will be seen by the largest audience. Very fast, I produced a movie in 2001 called Wild Iris. And Wild Iris, I used to run a theater. I ran a live theater called Central Coast Repertory Theater on the Central Coast of California. And it was professional theater, equity theater. And we developed a play from Kent Broadhurst. It was called Bluebird Bridals. It took, I saw something in it, Fried Green Tomatoes and Steel Magnolias had come out not that long before. And I said, it's kind of like that. And so we worked on it for 11 years. Finally, Dan Petrie ended up directing it. And it was his last film before he passed. And we ended up making the decision to take it to Showtime and Paramount TV. We made it. We got Jenna Rollins to star in it. We got Laura Linney to star in it. We got Emile Hirsch to star in it. We got 3 Emmy nominations and won. Because we knew that so many more people were going to see that movie than would ever have seen it in a movie theater. So we had to put our, big pants on and say, that's best for the movie. So write your script, then just the platform will take care of itself. I'm more concerned with make sure you do it for a very reasonable budget, because that's the really important thing.
Yeah, and I should mention that before the streaming wolf got into the hen house, every studio, because of massive egos of the executives running it, wanted to be at the Oscars. So they would have like 1, maybe 2 at the most, prestige movies, what they call are dramas, to put in their schedule every year as Oscar bait, is what they call it. And now that's all like drifted and to this, they don't seem to care anymore.
Well, it's not enough. Yes, I'm sorry. It's not enough to have the studio head saying, I have a feeling, a gut about this. Yeah. There's no Louis B. Mayers anymore. It doesn't. It's much more. And by the way, I'm not suggesting that. I think I have great respect for, and I work with them on a daily, weekly basis, every head of a studio. Hard job, but the decisions are often driven by the economics. They have to be, so that is part of the reason for the change.
I was just going to say to Stephanie, who asked that question, we look forward to hearing back from you on how your project develops. This next question, can you talk about the impact of YouTube and social media on movies and television, and even on stardom and celebrity?
That's an interesting question. We were talking, and Kevin teased that he wanted to talk about the value of stars now, which is way different than it was in the heyday, the golden age, where stars ruled the roost.
Yeah, and so did the agencies as a result. After that, when the studio system collapsed, the agents took over and represented and had the power base in the business, and that has obviously shifted. It shifted to packaging. It shifted to, and that's now shifted again because of the whole Writers Guild of it all. But I think that stars now, what's a star? A star now is, there's movie stars that have a body of work and they've earned those stripes. And then there are people who have done a movie or two, and they more are living on kind of the social media of it all. So I have a problem with calling those types of folks movie stars. There's some box office, worth to their brand, if you will. But, gosh, my brother asked me to play a game by putting together the 100 biggest male stars. We started with that ever. It's actually very difficult. The top 25 were rather easy. The next 50 were okay. And then it gets really wonky, because you're like, what do we qualify as a movie star, And so many of them were older, from pre-19, let's say 60, I mean, look at William Holden as an example. Bill Holden, if you look at his work, his movies, there's one important movie after the next, after the next. Look at Tom Hanks, one important movie after the next. I'm trying to get someone who's the equivalent. Look at Katharine Hepburn and Bette Davis, and look at Meryl Streep. They have a body of great work. To me, those are movie stars.
Tom Cruise has followed the path of somebody like I would compare it to John Wayne in a way. He's making a certain type of film that people know and they can go, and now it's a Tom Cruise film, like Mission Impossible 999 and all of those and variations on it, rather than the kind of more serious stuff he was doing earlier in his career.
I have to say a call out to Tom Cruise, because he's one of my favorite movie stars as a person. I love working with him. He's just phenomenal.
And he really promotes his films. He's out there. He's a producer, and he's a partner with the studio in that.
Totally.
Given some of the social shifts in our world with concerns about diversity in storylines, casts, and crews, how is that impacting movie making and also movie going?
Want me to? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, more diverse movies make more money. We need all voices heard. Let me make no bones about it. We need everyone to come to the table. We as a world, back to my initial opening, it's a great question to end on, because if you think about this, that is what Angelenos are about. That is what the movie business is about. We are the cultural exporters. As I said, we're at the epicenter. We need to promote diverse stories that we can all embrace and learn from and grow from. That is, to me, I love that question. I thank whoever asked it, because I think we must embrace new and culturally different ways of looking at the world, and we can do it through movies more than almost anything else.
Wonderful. Well, Kevin, I think you said that was our final question, so we will make that our final question. Thank you both so much. Pete, I'm going to turn this back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank everybody for this. I think it's a kind of fascinating topic. I hope you thought so too. I'm going to leave it to Kevin to give us that moment that's going to send us out into the day and make us feel good about movie going again.
Well, what I'd say is go back to the movies and support the industry. I know you will, because you're on this. If you're on this program, you have a love for movies, I just have great hope that the movie industry will flourish if people come to the table and make it an experience that Pete and I remember going to when we were younger.
Yeah. Let's give the movie industry a shot in the arm as well. Thank you, Kevin. This is great.
Thank
And
you.
I'm going to turn it back to Kim here.
You both were, this was so much fun and so informative. And Kevin, you have to come back and let us know how you enjoyed Godzilla versus King Kong. I'm a King Kong fan too. So this really got us thinking about the possibilities of this new world, this new future. So thank you so much for entertaining us, and please come back.
You're very welcome, Kim. Thank you. And thank you, Pete, for agreeing to do this.